gun violence is prevalent in the lives of Americans all over the country.
I believe that gun education would really promote a culture of safety, promote a culture of understanding for firearms.
We'll take a look at one man's life-changing experience with gun violence and how we can educate ourselves about the potential dangers on this edition of Equal Time. What happens when guns fall into the wrong hands and wind up on the streets? Rebecca Lapena introduces us to a man who grew up around violence and how he had his wake-up call when it was almost too late.
Gun violence is not foreign to Seaside High School football coach Alfred Avila. Guns can fall into the wrong hands and end up in the streets. Firearms have injured several of Avila's friends and family members.
It made me want to have a gun when I was younger because I was brought up violent, so I knew violence, so that's what I wanted to have. But I was scared to have one because of my dad. If he found out I had one, or else I probably would have carried one too.
The Avila family has a reputation of not being the people you want to mess with. As a young man, Avila had to live up to that expectation.
I had a situation where my sister one time had my uncle's gun, and they were playing with it, and it was loaded. She pulled it, one of them would end up dead, and they were at 9 years old at the time. So I just have a big thing about guns. My first time I was 14 years old, I had a man put a gun in my chest, and that was real scary at the time, and I started running. And when I ran, everybody was screaming, and I remember the only thing I kept thinking of is he gonna shoot? Is he gonna shoot? And I just kept running.
Now as a high school football coach, Avila sets an example for his players. He uses football as a method to keep his students busy and off the streets away from trouble. His motto is family forever, which shows his students that he is someone they can talk to if they need a mentor.
He's been here as a student and as a teacher. He's someone that a lot of us can trust, and he's very easy to come up to and talk to because he's so approachable.
His fellow teachers here at Seaside High School say that Avila's influence is felt throughout the campus and community, in an area where guns are common and families are torn apart by violence.
I can relate to Coach Av's gun altercation because when I was a teenager in high school here at Seaside High School, I had a gun pulled on myself. Very frightening. Life flashes before your eyes. I can definitely relate to his experience.
Avila does not want to see any more of his friends or family members involved with gun violence.
You know, my dad always said, if you have a gun, you're going to have to use it. So I'm just against guns. I don't like them in my house. I don't like them around me. I don't like to see them. I've seen too many of them.
When we come back, we'll look at ways that gun education can positively affect the community, showing San Jose residents when and where it's safe to use a firearm. Welcome back. We've seen how guns can have a negative effect on the lives of people. Rebecca Lapena now shows us how gun education is being advocated in San Jose through safety and control.
San Jose State University is an anti-gun campus. Absolutely no guns allowed. According to the Student Conduct Code, the possession or misuse of firearms or ammunition can result in disciplinary action. The University Police Department is the only authorized personnel to carry a gun on school grounds. But on a campus that's anti-gun, how well informed are students about guns, their safety protocols, and their potential dangers? About 2 years ago, SJSU used to have a firearm social club on campus. The club's goal was to teach students how to safely use firearms in the correct way. The club also had field trips to local shooting ranges to gain hands-on experience. The Firearm Social Club has been inactive since 2013, leaving a void in gun safety education, according to some observers.
So if we're able to educate the collegiate body about what guns are about, how to use them, and all the things that are very scary about guns, most people who are educated end up enjoying firearms.
Although SJSU does not currently offer classes on gun safety, San Jose has more than 7 indoor and outdoor shooting ranges. People can learn how to correctly hold, load, and operate a gun under professional supervision.
Majority of all the students don't know how to use it, so it would be nice to have to play safe and know your basics.
I feel like having a class to inform people could be beneficial, even though I still feel like gun law should be more strict.
Reed's Indoor Shooting Range is a popular spot known for its wide selection of gun rentals. The range allows newcomers to have an experienced friend guide them through the basics. Customers learn how to manually load a magazine, cock back the gun, turn the safety on and off, aim, and shoot. Reed's also offers defense training taught by a certified gun instructor. The hope is that no student will ever have to use the lessons taught here.
Well, we're definitely not going to show you, get that gun up and we'll show you how to point it. I don't see that happening, do you?
I think that would be beneficial in a way.
Welcome back to this edition of Equal Time. Today we're going to talk about gun restrictions in our society. Let's meet our guests.
I'm Alexis Markou, and I am a Justice Studies major here at San Jose State University.
My name is Lutex Patague, and I'm a mother of 3 young children.
My name is Michael Barnes. I'm a police officer at San Jose State University Police Department.
My name is Joe Green. I'm a correctional officer for the state of California.
My name is Rebecca Lapena, and I'm the student correspondent.
Rebecca, I thank you and all of you for bringing this story back to the table for discussion. In our society, we still haven't gotten a handle on how do we look at the Second Amendment rights to bear arms. Should we, shouldn't we? Should we be trained, should we not? I'm gonna start with the mom here next to me. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, in terms of training, I believe that it wouldn't hurt. So it wouldn't hurt to educate people on it, about the dangers of it, about how it could potentially hurt somebody. And so education is always a key for anything. I think for my children, I would always want them to be in the know, to know exactly how to do things. And so I think it's important that everyone does have some sort of training, even if it's just basics, it's really important.
Now, having said that, are you advocating that people should have a gun?
Yes.
Tell me
Oh, no,
why.
I'm sorry. Not advocating people should have a gun. Excuse me. No, definitely not that. I think it's more about education. It's not necessary, I'm not giving permission to my children to have a gun. It's more of a, you now know how to use it, and if you choose later on to do it, then you now have the basic knowledge to protect yourself as well as not hurt anybody else around you.
But it is possible to live your life without having a gun. And many people do it very successfully and do their entire life. Never fire one or own a gun. So Joe, what's your thoughts about this?
When you go to purchase a gun, myself included as a correctional officer, I still have to go the 10-day wait period. So I don't get through any of the loopholes or anything. But I still have to go through the whole process, and they don't make you do any training or education on it. But I feel like if you're going to own a gun, getting some education on how to handle a firearm, the basic principles of firearm, how it works, it's a essential part of owning a firearm.
But does it trouble you that young people have a lot to learn in life and in school and whatever? Why should a gun be on the list of learning?
Because it's a lethal thing. If you mishandle it, if you don't know how to work it, even if you're not intending to, it could backfire. Something can go wrong. It could injure yourself or other people.
All right. So he's talking safety. What are you talking? What do you think about this?
I agree with him as well. You need education in order to obtain a gun, because I know for when you buy a handgun, you do have to participate in a certification, like a handgun. You have to get a license for it. But for shotguns, any 18-year-old can just go buy a shotgun without any knowledge of how to use it, and they can just go to the shooting range. But I feel like in order to be able to use that, you should have some prior knowledge to it.
All right. But we've been talking about responsible use of guns. Officer, talk with me now about irresponsible use of guns. We have it in our society, all around our campus, all around our world. How is that not getting across to people that everybody shouldn't have a gun?
Well, that's a tough debate, but the bottom line is that the guns are out there. They're out there and they're available to our kids. So the more that we can, as officers and correction officers and any other law enforcement agency, get the guns off the street, the better off we're going to be. As far as non-criminals and people that are allowed to have guns, I agree with everybody else, and I think it's pretty across the board that the more educated you can be and the better trained you can be with the gun and the safe care of a gun and storage of a gun, the better off we're all going to be.
Now, people watching would probably say, everything sounds smart here, but the reality is there are tons of people out there in the world who have guns that shouldn't have a gun.
Sure.
They shouldn't be out there with gangs or with community groups that are not necessarily designing to go out and duck hunt or go out and deer hunt. They're thinking about doing other things. I think part of your research has been into that. How people are using guns.
Yeah, one thing I've been thinking about is, are we really trying to focus on limiting the access of guns to the public, or are we really trying to focus on educating everyone? So I feel like if we do take away the access of guns, people who use it for leisure will be affected by that. Responsible users will be affected negatively by that when they have done nothing wrong except be responsible, and now their rights are getting taken away. So.
And Mom here mentioned that you start by telling your children a responsible message about learning how to use a gun properly.
Yes.
My parents did that as well. But I worry about the ones that just learn about it on the street or just learn about it in school.
I think we all do.
Yeah. How do we get a message to them if they don't really go to social media to find out about how to use a gun? How do we get the word out? Joe?
I don't know. That's a difficult topic on how to instruct people on how to use a firearm. I think it's all willpower. You know, if you want to purchase a weapon, then you need to make the bigger step and go through and educate yourself before purchasing it. Because if you purchase it and say I'm gonna go to the shooting range, no big deal. You go to the shooting range and you don't point it down range. You don't know how to handle it at the range. You could hurt someone there just as much as yourself.
And how often is it, you think, Rebecca, that people look at the news stories about home invasions and guns and violence with gangs and all that, and the reaction is, I better get a gun. I better protect myself. I need to secure myself. Are you hearing that from people?
I am. I think there's a really thin line between positive gun exposure and negative gun exposure. A lot of times when we see gun exposure on TV, it's because there was a crime, there was a burglary, there was a shooting. We don't really talk about positive gun exposure, and there are ways that there are positive gun exposure. People go to the shooting range for leisure all the time, or people grow up with guns in their house having it be responsible. It doesn't always need to be negative, but in our media, we seem to emphasize on negative gun exposure.
Well, we have a justice studies expert right over here. Let's ask her, how do we get a responsible message about guns to young people?
To young people, I would say by educating them in a sense to where they should know the consequences if they use a gun improperly, or like it could have potential, like it's lethal, and just getting them to know. But I think it's hard to, you can't apply that into a high school though, because sex education, because parents are gonna be like, I don't want my kids knowing about guns, so it's kind of up in the air.
All right, and if we get the message to young people and they understand how to use a gun properly, do we want guns on campus? Do we want guns on? Why not? We're teaching them how to use them properly.
Well, I can only speak for the school, and they set the rules that there is no guns on our campus.
Why? Why do you think that is?
The school believes that it's safer that we don't have any guns on campus with the exception of police officers.
Okay. And as a faculty member for 2 decades, I'm glad you have that policy. Most of us don't want to come to a campus environment and be worried about you packing a gun or you packing a gun. But Mom, if we planted the thought responsible use of the gun means if she has one in her purse and she has the legal right to carry it and all the things she should have done, why am I worried? Should I be worried as a faculty member?
Yes, I think we should be worried because there is also, other factors such as human error. It's not necessarily me with owning the gun not knowing how to use it, but it's also other people around me. So if that's always been on my part, is I've always been afraid of the human error on itself. So having guns in my own home, I would never allow it. That in itself is another risk that I don't want to take at home. I think I'm more afraid of my children's curiosity and as well as other people's curiosity about the gun than I am of being not protecting myself. So that's my whole thing, is I don't think it's, I believe that it should not, it should start with education. And although we allow it, and just like she said, you know, we allow sex education in the home, we're not giving permission to our children to go out and do it. It's more about, these are the dangers, this is what you should do to be responsible, and how you should act on it also.
But versus sex education, where it's a private decision by an individual that doesn't necessarily affect me. If she or he, the student, is carrying a gun, trained or not trained, that's a potential danger to me if I'm on campus or in the workplace or whatever. I worry about the irresponsible person who sees it and say, hey, can I see that? Let me try it. And the next thing you know, you have a problem. Yeah, definitely. And I think then that right there goes back to the basics of education. So if we're all educated on it and how, well, rules on there too. So on top of the education, but then rules. Like we don't want to go in and then take someone's gun. I mean, we'd hope that no one would try to do that. It's more of a education factor. I mean, I know I've been saying that quite a bit, but it's about educating those around us and about the responsibility with the actual handgun. Or
just to piggyback on the education part, I think that's just step one. They need to be trained.
Exactly.
If they're going to have a gun, like where I grew up, a lot of young people had guns, and I was trained on it at a very young age, and also educated on when I was allowed to be around the guns and when I was not. And fortunate for me, my family was very pro-gun and pro-safety, so there was not a lot of concern. And when we did go out and use the guns, it was always under supervision and great training.
And just for general purposes, anyone in the audience watching, where could they go to learn how to use a gun properly?
Just about any firearms store is going to have all sorts of information. So and online, obviously, but any place you can buy a gun, they're going to have information for you to go train. In shooting ranges, they'll set up trainings there too.
Okay. And when you're dealing with people who are novices, they've never touched a gun, but
then they need to have a very, very well-trained professional to teach them. Right. I believe.
But when you go to a shooting range, it's not only your safety that you're worried about, but it's other people's safety. So if you have other senior people at the firing range that go there often, work their firearms safely and professionally, and you have someone there that doesn't know what they're doing, they'll step in and instruct them because it's also for their safety. Now, the thing that you guys are talking about at school, bringing firearms at school, I believe if you're trained and you have the right paperwork on say concealed carry, you can use that to protect yourself. Also, if someone comes in, say the Aurora shootings in the movie theaters or Sandy Hook, say a teacher were there had a concealed carry weapon, they could have put that all to a stop before it even got out of hands.
But are you saying that?
Stopped it quicker.
Yeah. But do you think people would, if they had a gun, they had the legal right to be carrying a gun, and they're in that theater or on a campus or whatever, and they want to stop an action from taking place that they think is inappropriate, they should be able to raise that gun and use it?
If you think that you're going to be able to stop a threat to immediate life, then I think you should be able to use it.
Interesting. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. To me, it's like, how do you even make that decision? Like for me personally, so I have 3 children, but I also work with children. I work as a physical education teacher. So that I don't know, I just wouldn't have been able to, even if I had a gun, in which I wouldn't, to be able to make that decision without any proper training or education or any of that. That's just life-changing for me to even think. For anybody, right? I mean, especially for a teacher, that's not even their profession. As a teacher, you're there to educate children and make sure that they're safe. And to have a gun, I don't know, I just wouldn't have be able to even see myself even using it in any kind of situation, whether there be a gun out, whether it be a shooter on campus or in my own home. Just the actual thought, the process that it would take to actually even pull the trigger is so much more deep than the actual doing.
All right, so we've moved from restrictions by a university or a government agency on whether you can have a gun or not to personal responsibility and self-restriction, self-imposed restrictions. What have you found out, or what have you been hearing about people having that option and having their own self-imposed restrictions?
I feel like a lot of people nowadays do want guns just because there's a lot of controversy going on and people want to be protected, but I think that we should have stricter laws on who we give guns to.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of laws right now where you obviously can't get a gun if you're mentally ill or if you are a felon, if you've committed a misdemeanor. I just think those things need to be more public. A lot of people don't know about those. Or for people who want to go to a gun show and try to get through loopholes where they think they might not do a background check on guns, I think we need to get stricter on who we sell guns to.
All right. And then if we have guns in our pocket, we've been trained, we have the legal right to carry it. I'm going to go back to your comment. I'm still concerned as a faculty member, if she's packing a gun in my classroom and I know about it, I don't necessarily want to be in that classroom.
Well, for a concealed carry, you have to go through more training, and on how to carry it, what it does. You have to actually go to the firing range, fire it proficiently, and then you get the concealed carry license. You can't just go to it like a gun store, like she was saying, and then purchase it and then be able to carry it like that. It's a higher level than being able to carry a regular, a weapon regularly.
All right, but let's say she's gone through all that, she's done the proper things, she's got what she needs. I still don't want that in my classroom. Most faculty don't want that in their classroom.
I understand.
So why should we allow that?
I think it's a personal decision. I think as an American, our Second Amendment rights, that is our right to carry it, to protect ourselves, to also protect other people. And there are some people that are gonna abuse it. There's always gonna be people that abuse any kind of law.
Right.
But I mean, if you go to a gym, a boxing gym, you box, you train in boxing. You don't go out on the streets start beat people up. You got to control yourself.
Right. I think the university's policy, though, supports the notion, though, that the faculty person or administrator or anybody still has the right to know what's going on in their environment and to be safe. And even though you may be wonderfully trained, I still don't want you to have the option to use that thing in our presence.
I think about being informed, I think they should be able to they should have to notify the school or notify wherever they're at if they're carrying it. That way, if something does happen, they say, all right, well, he had a weapon, so, let's look at him, see if anyone else got a hold of it, something like that. That way, if something does happen, God forbid it does, you know where to look.
And do you worry, based on this conversation alone, do you worry about someday there could be a shootout where things get out of control? You don't mean to cause something like that, but one thing leads to another, that leads to another, and the next thing you know, people of good will come out with their guns and we have a problem. Do you worry about that?
It's possible, but I'd like to just, before I forget, get back to you were worried about Rebecca having a gun in your classroom, responsible, safe, young student. What about the student that's not trained, didn't tell you he or she has a gun, didn't have any education, but they're still sitting in your classroom?
With a gun.
Now are you happy if she has a gun?
I'm concerned. More so, probably.
So now you got two guns in your classroom, but you got somebody that's trained, besides the amount of time it takes for us at UPD to get there to help.
So that's why I think you have policy that says, let's not bring them in the classroom.
No, I'm asking you what your opinion is, though. I mean,
Well,
would you rather her have a gun if you know that there's somebody that's going to bring it in there regardless?
I'd rather nobody in the studio, nobody in my classroom, nobody have a gun, because this is a safe environment educational institution.
And we want to keep it that way, absolutely. Yes. But
so your rights notwithstanding, why should you have it here if we feel it's safer not to have anybody have them?
Because there's always going to be that person that feels like they need to be protected, and they just bring it regardless. They're not going to care. They might not even have a license for the weapon. They got it on the streets. They feel like, all right, well, someone's trying to get me, so I'm going to bring it into the classroom. I'm going to bring it wherever I go. There's always.
Are we feeding into paranoia, though, when you say something like that?
I believe so, partially. But, there's always people that try to take the next level up to protect themselves. And, talking about growing up in the wrong area, if someone is a gang affiliate, they're going to want to protect themselves at all times, and they're going to do it any way possible.
Yeah, as a student at SJSU, we've had some scares where we think there's a gunman on campus. It's not for sure. And when I'm in the classroom, I would want someone, at least one person, to know how to use the gun correctly. I have no idea how to use a gun. If someone told me, protect us, I have no idea. So I would want at least the instructors to have knowledge of how they can protect us when UPD can't get there in time.
Do you want the instructors to know how to do it? Okay. Well, we've done some training with the police department on campus about that, but not on how to use guns to protect you. And I think a lot of faculty would draw the line and say, wait a minute, we'll show you how to duck and cover and run and all the things you taught us, but we are definitely, and
Yes.
barricade in. Well, we're definitely not going to show you, get that gun up, I'm going to show you how to point it. I don't see that happening, do you?
I think that would be beneficial in a way, but I was thinking earlier,
Well, why do you think it would be beneficial?
because if there is a shooter in, say, in a classroom, you don't have time to barricade. If an instructor was carrying a gun, they would have that knowledge on how to shoot it and how to protect their students.
But again, we're taking on the responsibility in an area where we're not trained as faculty or another student to protect a group. You've been trained to protect yourself. And I think that's why this conversation has been very good, and I wish we had more time to continue it, so maybe we should in the future. But I thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we thank you for joining us for this edition of Equal Time.